Guys, welcome back. Today we are talking about getting massive quads from someone who doesn't have massive quads, but I've been trying, and I'm going to tell you how I've been trying and why I think it's the best method I could possibly be trying, and how if you want massive quads, a bunch of this information might be applicable to you and help you. For me personally, I have solid hamstrings. They're not wildly amazing, but they're solid. My glutes, similar, very solid. They're not areas that I have to really put too much time and attention to, and they just kind of grow fine. I have fine insertions, they get lean, they look shredded, like they're good for me. I don't have to put much focus to them. So I put them on the back burner. I have had them on the back burner for quite a long period of time, to be honest, where I just do enough so that they keep progressing and growing. Now, in the past, for my quads, I would focus on things that didn't really nail the quads. I assumed it would, but it just wasn't for me. They would really nail my adductors. So I have big adductors on my physique, not such great quads as a whole, and I don't have a nice sweeping vastus lateralis. The VL doesn't, the outer quad doesn't nicely sweep. This is something outside of my control. This is just muscle architecture that you're born with. You know, some muscles just look sweet on people where they have amazing muscle bellies and insertions and all that good stuff. For me, I don't have that on my quads. I'm never going to have the most aesthetically pleasing thighs as a whole, but I just want to make them as big as possible. So that is what I've been focusing on. And so for me, again, to improve the aesthetic of my thighs, and particularly for competing in bodybuilding, where we want that X-frame, we want that symmetry, I want to try and build my quads as best as possible. So I'm going to take you through how I've been approaching that basically my entire off-season so far since I came off stage in 2021 at WNBF Worlds. So for this next section, we've got Ada with us, and I'm going to be talking through basically 4 kind of principles for prioritizing a muscle group and things that you can think about that I've applied to my quads, but you can equally apply this to any other muscle group that you are trying to bring up, for example, your chest. So the first thing to come to, I think, is really just what tool are you using to bring up that muscle? And that is the exercise. So for me, like I said in the past, my adductors just grew. And honestly, they love to take over from the movements that I'm doing. So I previously really prioritized squat pattern. So high bar squat. I'd also do low bar squat, but transition towards high bar squat. And then it was a heel elevated high bar squat, and trying to really kind of have maybe a slightly narrower stance, toes pointing a little bit more forward, and really trying to sit into my quads and sit nice and deep. Get lots of knee flexion. And that is the key with quad training, is like, hey, get lots of forward knee travel, lots of knee flexion, hamstring to calf. You're going to really maximally stretch the quad muscles. Now, I transitioned away from free bar squats, and I haven't done a free bar squat in years now, and more towards machines. One, because the gym I'm currently at, Yorkies, they have many different good machines. So at the moment, I'm doing a pendulum squat, doing a belt squat, and I'm doing a hack squat within my sessions. They're spread between 3 different sessions, which I'll come on to, but these are all movements where I could select them and I'm like, hey, I know I'm getting lots of knee flexion, I can go really deep, and I can ensure the limiting factor is my quad and not my adductors. Where I did other movements, my adductors again would just take over. The other thing within this is also rep range. You might find that your muscle responds better to certain rep ranges. For hypertrophy, it's super forgiving. A great general recommendation is anywhere between 5 to 30 reps. I think 30, especially for quad training. Maybe it can apply to some isolation lifts, but you're probably looking at anywhere from 5 to 20. And then probably the sweet spot for a lot of you, and me included, is kind of that 10 to 15 sort of rep range, where you're just getting tons of really good local fatigue, local disruption, a really good pump within that muscle, and you're not getting that unwanted joint connective tissue fatigue and also just systemic fatigue within the body. So the first thing I looked at was exercise selection and picking movements where I knew I could get really good range of motion for the muscle intended, so lots of knee flexion, and that the quad was going to be the limiting factor. The next one really just ties into the first one because it's how you execute the movement. And I sort of talked about it already. With my quads, I'm looking to get as much knee flexion as possible, and I'm trying to get hamstring to calf to really maximally stretch and get as much range of motion on the quads as I can. However, actually, you can even take range of motion too far for the quads as an example, where I've seen people in the past where maybe they're doing a squat pattern and they're getting really good knee flexion, and then they keep sitting deeper and they actually reduce their knee flexion and they get more hip extension. And so now they're really, really well training the glutes. Now they're training the glutes really well and the quads, but maybe they're better off not going as deep to maximally stretch the quads and not get more glute and then come back up. Now, these are just small minor details, but these are some of the things that you can experiment with in terms of even your stance within movements, how much you kind of point your toes out or not. Again, how deep is deep enough for you to get the best local stimulus to the muscle that you're trying to train. And so execution is super important. Another one is I came again from the background of doing squats. I also came from the background of doing some powerlifting and power building, and that really gets you to focus on moving A to B and as much weight as possible, not trying to create as much stimulus through the muscle that you're training. And so that can lead to you bouncing out of the hole, rushing the eccentric, not sitting as deep and getting as much range of motion as you should. And so these are just general principles you can apply to many movements. It's like, hey, let's slow down a bit, at least a 2-second eccentric, up to 4 seconds for most movements, so you know you're in control of that movement. And then you want to maybe even pause at the fully stretched position to spend a little bit more time there. And you really want to make sure that the movement is conducive to the muscle that you're trying to train. You're keeping the tension on the intended target muscle and not just focusing on moving A to B. That the pausing at the bottom also will reduce the kind of bouncing and using other things that aren't your muscle to generate force to be able to move the lift. So really nail down your execution, because it might not even be that you need to start focusing on adding additional sets or frequency. If you get the execution and the kind of exercise selection correct, that might already be enough for most people to already make leaps of bounds of progress. It certainly allowed me initially to, but once I'd done that, it was like, hey, I still need more. So the next piece that's really simple that you can focus on is exercise order. You can prioritize the muscle that you're looking to train by doing it earlier within the week. As you can imagine, at the start of your kind of microcycle, you hopefully are coming off the back of maybe a rest day, and so you are more likely to be better able to perform and get quality work done earlier within the microcycle than at the latter half of the microcycle. That's likely the case. We don't, I believe, have any research to back up that claim that you're going to grow more the things that you put at the start of the microcycle than at the end, but I think it theoretically makes sense. And then you can apply that to an individual session basis too, where you can put your priorities at the start of your sessions because they're going to get the most quality work and likely grow the best. Actually, I think there was a meta-analysis systematic review that recently showed, yeah, you gain more strength, but you don't necessarily gain more hypertrophy on the movements you do earlier within your sessions. So we don't actually have any good evidence to say that that is the case. I just think it theoretically makes sense. And I think anecdotally, I've seen that too. And I think you see it with people where the things they prioritize, normally the things they like, grow the best. And the stuff they put towards the end of the session, abs, calves, arms, often don't grow as well because they're more fatigued doing those movements. So like I said, you can prioritize that kind of weak point that you're trying to bring up by doing it earlier within the week, earlier within the session. So you're going to be able to see some of my plan here, and I'm going to take you through something that is the last, which is exercise volume and frequency. So how many times a week are you doing? Are you training that muscle? And how much volume are you putting through it? So I actually kind of probably went against my last point because I train upper body at the start of the week and then lower body. But for me, coming off the weekend, I tend to just find that an upper body session eases me into the week better than a lower body session. I have tried having lower body first, but my weekends can sometimes just be a little bit less consistent than midweek. And so sometimes the Sunday night, I haven't had my best sleep. It's always good sleep. It's not my best. And then also sometimes on the Sunday, I've actually walked a lot. And so because I'm in London, easy to get loads of steps. So I just found actually by delaying it to the second day is better for me. But anyway, I train my lower body 3 times a week, but actually I only train my quads 3 times a week. As I said, hamstrings are on the back burner and I'm blasting my quads at the moment. So you can see here, Also, I don't train my quads first within my sessions, but they're very early within my sessions. I just like on this first lower body day to get my hamstrings and calves out the way so I don't have to worry about doing them later. I also find doing my calves first within my lower body sessions sets me really well up for getting maximal knee flexion and sitting nice and deep within my quad patterns. And again, I just like getting the hamstring curls out the way. They feel good to have just done them. Also, this might sound strange because my quads are a weak point, but my quads get massively pumped. And so I find that I can't really lie on my quads very well during leg curls, lying leg curls. It's just uncomfortable. So anyway, what was I saying here? So in terms of volume, you can see week 1 here I've got, how many sets have I got? Week 1, I'm starting with, where is it? Yeah, Watson. So 12 sets for week 1. And I actually haven't got the sets like counted up for this final week here, but you can see here I started at 4 sets apiece, and I'm already here now at 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So that's actually increased quite a lot across the mesocycle here. And then with my belt squats, they've actually maintained at 3, haven't increased those. That's because this second session I use as kind of a quote unquote recovery session. It's not a recovery session. It's just not as heavily overloaded. It's a hamstring priority session. I still have a hamstring priority session. It's only a hamstring priority session because it has my big compound straight leg deadlifts, and I do 3 sets. And to be quite honest with you, after 3 sets of these belt squats where I do 1 breather per set, my quads are blown up. I just haven't found adding anything there to make sense. And also because I'm, after having done the deficit straight leg deadlifts, I'm already fairly cooked. Whereas for this session, I have been able to push because I'm feeling able to do so. It's something I always do, is auto-regulate my set volume based off how I'm feeling. But next meso, I probably will start with 3 sets of the hack squat. The hack squat was a new movement to me, and so it was quite novel at the start of the mesocycle. And then down here, I have Watson pendulum squats. So again, these were a new movement that I exchanged for leg press. So I'm up to 3 sets and then 3 sets of leg extensions. So I've gone from 4 to 6. So nothing crazy in terms of additional volume there. It's mostly actually this first session where I've added the biggest chunk. And that probably makes sense. It's the session where my quads are the freshest because I'm coming off the back of the weekend where I haven't trained my quads there since Saturday. So I've had Sunday off, Monday off. So I've had 2 rest days, whereas every other one, I've only had 1 single rest day. But I have found, and this is part of this last section of volume and frequency, where again, my volume, I'm prioritizing quads, and so my volume is getting upwards towards 20 sets, and I find my quads recover very quickly, but I don't need a lot of set volume within sessions. So like, hey, this is 7 sets within this session, but that's like the highest I tend to get towards is like 7, 8 sets, which like that's a lot for me. Whereas even in some of these, I've only got like 3 whole sets there. You might say it's more than 3 because I've got some myo-rep kind of breather sets here. Maybe it's up to like 6 or something. You know, I don't need much more than that to have completely felt like I've kind of blown my quads up, but then they just don't really get very sore and they recover very quickly. So I just find, hey, why am I waiting to train them twice a week when I can get in some additional quality volume here? And you can see I'm also getting quite a bit of volume through leg extensions and sissy squats. Machine sissy squats are being done, and that's to train the rectus femoris. So you also want to train every function of that muscle group. If it's a lagging muscle group, you probably want to be doing that. And it just allows me, again, to get that additional volume, but for like a really low fatigue cost. So I find that really does help me here. So yeah, you can see kind of my setup there where I'm training them 3 times a week and through those movements. So guys, hopefully this has been interesting to see how to prioritize a muscle group and try and grow it as best you can. To go through those kind of 4 steps of principles that you would think about, find exercises that train it really well and pick rep ranges that suit that muscle group really well, and find you get a really good stimulus to fatigue ratio. So lots of local pump disruption, local fatigue for limited joint connective tissue and systemic fatigue. Execute them really, really well. Point 2, make sure you're getting a full range of motion, particularly at that long muscle length. Control the eccentric, maybe even pause in that deep stretch position. 3, think about your exercise order, and within the week 2, try and prioritize it, make it earlier within the week, earlier within sessions. And then 4, look at your volume and frequency. Can you put some things on the back burner so you have a bit more recoverability to put towards this weak point? And then consider how quickly is that muscle recovering. Likely the more volume you've got, the more frequency you want to have to split that volume of work up. But also just look at, hey, within sessions, when are you getting towards this situation where you've got a really high in-session stimulus, and then how quickly you're recovering, and then basically get it up to a high in-session stimulus and train it again as soon as you are recovering, and balance that out through the week. You may even undulate things where you have more priority days and back off days so that you can kind of have this daily undulating kind of periodization style, so you're maximizing this stimulus to fatigue through the week to give you the best chance of growing that muscle. So guys, if you found this interesting, useful, let me know. If you'd like to see anything in future vlogs, if you've got any questions based off this, again, let me know. And as a reminder, at Revive Stronger, we are online coaches. This is what we do with our clients. You can see me applying this to my own training, but I also apply these principles and rules towards my clients to maximize their growth and bring up their best look, whether or not they're a competitor or just someone who wants to look their most jacked, or maybe they just want like huge arms, and we can apply these principles to that too. So guys, thank you for tuning in. If you're not subscribed, also please subscribe, share this with anyone you think would find it interesting. Give it a thumbs up if you've watched this far, and I'll catch you in the next one. Take care.